Hey guys, this is Lutyrannus. Not that you didn't know that. Um, I wanted to make kind of a low effort, not low effort, but a, yeah, low effort. I mean, you can see here, I have notes here. I'm literally just recording my screen while playing a video from the lovely and wonderful Mao. And I just kind of wanted to go over my thoughts on Dose, Monster Hunter Dose as a game. Now that I've finished it, I did everything in the offline and online mode. Not literally everything, but I've completed pretty much huge chunks of the content, and um, still will be playing it a decent amount in the future, and I have a lot more content to do. But by almost everyone's standards, I've finished the game at least. I defeated the final boss, and in both online and offline. So I just kind of want to go over my thoughts. This is gonna basically be a podcast in a way. None of this. I have like I pointed out, I have notes here that is basically just a list of my like topics I want to cover, but everything I say will be pretty much just off the cuff. Me sharing my thoughts, there's no script or anything is what I mean by that. I'm also using a bit lower quality mic because I don't really have a good recording setup. And my better mic actually records too much in general. It like every little sound in my room gets picked up. But I think this is fine. I think it has kind of a in a way almost like not a cheery, it has a quaint, comfortable vibe to it. When there's just kind of a shitty mic, some good music, and someone talking. And yeah. So I want to start just kind of from the beginning with character creation, because obviously the first thing you see when you boot up the game is the opening FMV. So, and I will talk about that. But you know what? Actually, let's talk about that before we talk about the character creation, because it is the first thing you see in the game. And I think the opening FMV is really good. It kind of it does a really good job of displaying the kind of atmosphere or the tone, I guess, that Dose is going for with its narrative and its general world. And I like that a lot. It's not it's not like a nature documentary like the original game's opening is, but it's focused on the complexities and mundanities of being a hunter in this region. How we get to see general combat with Blanganga as it kind of shifts into the Elder Dragon Observatory tracking Kushaladora, and we get to see how they communicate with each other, and just kind of, I don't know, a lot of those things that Dose kind of focuses on, which I find is interesting. I don't know. I think it's pretty good. We'll talk more kind of about the tone of Dose as we go on, so I won't bring up too much more. But I think they did good with the opening FMV. The character creation is really good as an evolution of the first game's character creation. I like that they have a system where you can like kind of sort through the different parts. So like you can search like, oh, I want a voice that sounds old and deep or whatever. That part's neat. I also like that they added new undergarments, clothing, because That's the kind of thing you would expect them to neglect since you don't see it very often, but they took the time to add 2 new ones that kind of fit with the culture, the more Eastern culture of Jumbo and Dundorma, as opposed to the more Western culture of Kokoto and Mindguard from the first game. So yeah, I quite liked the character creation. And of course, you know, it features Hunter Go Forth, the new theme of this game, which I think is something really interesting, just in general, the way they treat Hunter Go Forth in this game. Because it's basically a replacement for Proof of a Hero, in a way, you know? Like, later Monster Hunter games after DOS would treat Proof of a Hero as like a theme that supersedes the main theme of that game. And DOS doesn't really feel like it does that. You know, Proof of a Hero is featured in it, in certain, the motif in general. The melody is in specific ways, but it's never feels like it's like superseding Hunter Go Forth. You know, which makes a lot of sense when you consider that this was the first ever Monster Hunter game with a main theme that was different. And a lot of that will kind of change coming into Portable Second and Freedom 2, where they would kind of go back to treating Proof of a Hero as the theme song of those games. But yeah, so it playing during the character creation just kind of sets the tone immediately that this is going to be something new. This isn't going to be the same game that they had sold 3 times now, Monster Hunter, Monster Hunter G, and Monster Hunter Portable, 3 times in Japan, at least. But this game only came out in Japan, so that's really what's relevant here. So yeah, and just like the first game, when you finish creating your character, it puts you in the village immediately, which I still think is good, you know, because when you're a new character, or a new player, I mean, and you create a new character, I don't think it would be the best idea to overwhelm you immediately with a decision you have to make between town and village. You'd be like, what do these mean? I don't know. Do I want to play online? Do I want, it just makes sense to just, no nonsense, create a character, select OK, and then boom, you see a full motion video cutscene of from the first person perspective of your character entering Jumbo Village. That's a new thing too, is that the FMVs actually play in the game instead of just in the gallery. In the first game, any gallery cutscenes that you can unlock, FMVs, the FMVs do not actually play in the game, they just unlock in the gallery, and then you can go into the gallery and watch them. This game introduced FMVs that are directly part of the story and will play, I think there's only 2 that I can think of actually, 2 in both offline and online. So 4 total, but yeah, that was definitely a good idea. I like the concept of having it be from the first person, so you know, it kind of solves the problem of having a unique character in a pre-rendered cutscene, but also makes you feel more like you are your hunter, you know, because that's immersion being such like a big part of this game, these games in general, is you know, that first person perspective, or setting it up with that first person perspective kind of puts you in that mindset right away. One thing I don't know if I like as much, though, is that when the FMV ends in Jumbo Village, you basically are put in front of the Jumbo Village chief, and nothing happens until you press circle to talk to him. I don't know if I like this decision or not. So the original game, you wake up in your house in Kokoto Village, and you're given no direction. And I think that this was actually genius, because talking to the NPCs in the first game is very important. It's like a very large part of the narrative of the game in general. Like, I think you lose a major part of the experience if you don't talk to any of the NPCs at all. And so because you have literally no direction, the first thing players are going to do, like completely new players who have never played Monster Hunter before, because keep in mind that's who the first game was mostly designed for. They're gonna walk out of their house and they're gonna see a lady standing there talking to a guy, and they're gonna immediately see that they can interact with her. And so the first thing they're gonna do is talk to her, because they don't know what else to do. They don't know anything about the game. They don't know where they are. They don't know how to play. And so they're gonna walk out and talk to her, and she immediately gives you some direction. You know, she tells you to go talk to the Kokoto village chief. But she doesn't tell you who that is. She just tells you to talk to the chief. And none of the characters in the first game have names. So the only way to figure out who someone is by talking to them. So it's a very natural and it's just a very natural way to make the player talk to people. And I kind of missed that. You know, you don't have that in DOS. It kind of makes sense that they force you to press circle. They don't just start you talking to him, because I think that's kind of supposed to do the same thing and make the player feel like they are in control and they need to be talking to people. But ultimately, I think overall it's a weaker start. It's a bit more railroady, or railroading. Like, for example, the Jumbo Village Chief just tells you to go introduce yourself to everyone, rather than the game design in general encouraging you to go talk to everyone, because you don't know who is who, and the game teaches you from, the opening moments that talking to people is important, and that talking to people is the only way to kind of have a sense of direction beyond just whatever you personally want to do. The other thing I like about that approach to beginning the game is that players who, one, have already played the game before, and two, don't care at all about the story, can just kind of ignore it. You can't do that in DOS in the same way. You have to talk to the Jumbo Village Chief at the start, which I guess is true in the first game as well. You have to talk to the Kokoto Chief, but the Kokoto Chief's dialogue is like a lot different. But yeah. Yeah, so I'll just kind of go over the offline mode in general from there, and then we'll move on to the online mode and just kind of some general thoughts about hunting gameplay in general. But the village has a very unique quest progression that I really like. DOS in general, the progression is very natural in a way where you don't think about it, which is really good. It's kind of supposed to be natural in the first game as well, but the quest tier system, where the quests are sorted into different star levels, is very I don't know the right term for it, but I guess it would be just gamey. Like, it's there's something I don't quite like about sorting the quests by some perceived difficulty, but also that difficulty does not necessarily reflect anything beyond the progression itself. Like in 3-star, you'll unlock Iodrome, as if Iodrome would somehow be harder than a Rathian that you could fight in 2-star. Whereas in DOS, there are star levels, but you don't progress by star levels. So, for example, you could complete a 3-star quest, and that might unlock a 1-star quest, since all the quests are sorted in different ways by either the locale or the monsters, etc. I also like the way the quests rotate, but and I'll talk about this a little bit more when I get into the online section. I think that it's kind of dumb that they still rotate the way they do in Monster Hunter 1 and G online as well. I don't think that makes much sense, and I think it ends up being more of a hindrance than it is a good thing, but I'll talk about that a bit more when I get to the online mode section. Another thing I find interesting is that the tutorial in this game is completely optional, unlike the first game. The first game requires you to complete the village chief's tutorials if you want to progress. The second game does not do that. In DOS, you are able to talk to the instructor and do his training, which will teach you about the game, but you're not required to do that. I think this was a good choice overall. One thing that seems not clear to me, but one thing that I've generally picked up on is that with Monster Hunter G in particular, but also a little bit with DOS, they were more catering or more trying to like appeal to their core audience than they were build a new audience in a way. Not that they, they obviously wanted to build a new audience, but they seem to have almost treated DOS as their second attempt at making the game they had wanted to make with the first game. So in that way, it was more, how do we appeal to the people who play a lot, and making the tutorial optional is definitely a good way to do that. You do kind of have the problem then of where new players, are probably going to get their ass kicked if they ignore it. And, as a game dev, that can be a problem when someone decides to not play your game because they found it too hard at the beginning and were too stubborn to just do the tutorial. But I think overall it was probably a good choice. The tutorial itself is pretty good. It's not as good as the original game's tutorial, but it's a close second, I think. They also added these training quests where you can go out with each of the different weapon classes, and I think that was a great idea. That's not something that was in the original game at all. They explain to you how the different weapon classes work, but they explain it to you when you only have a sword and shield, and they don't give you any other ones. In this game, they still only start you with a sword and shield, which I think makes sense to kind of limit the options and let the player learn how the game works with just one weapon. And also then learn how the armor forging and upgrading system works. But ultimately, I think it was a good idea to give them training quests where they can try out the other weapons. If I remember right, it actually only starts you with the 5 weapons from the original game, and then at a certain point, will also let you do training quests for the new weapons, the kind of subtypes in a way, which I'll talk about those a little bit more later. I actually didn't write that in my notes, so I'll talk about those a little bit now. Then actually, the new weapons in this game are almost, they're treated like subtypes. Like, they're not really treated as new weapons in a way, and it kind of really shows in the balancing. Obviously this game, or maybe not obviously, but this game was pretty rushed. So they tried to kind of treat them, like the gun lance, for example, is not treated as a new weapon type that someone would main, but it's treated as like a different version of the lance. So like someone who really likes the lance, in the mind of the developers, would probably use both lance and gun lance. So gun lance has a lot of balancing problems that would basically lance has a lot of gun lance has a lot of balancing problems that if you use exclusively gun lance, people will those kind of people have problems with that usually. Alright, just taking a sip of my soda. Let's see what else to talk about here. The villager request system. So the village has a mechanic called villager requests that's completely new to this game. It was the origin of the bubble, like the what we think of as dialogue bubbles that appear above characters. But in this game, they're only blue and red. There's no yellow ones like there would be in later games, and they don't indicate that you're supposed to talk to someone like they do in later games. Instead, they indicate the villager has a request for you. They have something they want you to do for them, and this I think was a great idea. It's a big part of the unique progression, and doing requests for specific people will make specific things happen that the game does not tell you about. And so they do. The game does tell you that doing requests for people will make things like happen, but they don't tell you doing what for who will make what happen. So if you play blind like I did, that's something I probably should have mentioned. I played through this game almost completely blind. There were some things I had spoiled, either on accident or on purpose because I needed to know it for some research or something. But almost everything in this game I did blind. And yeah. So if you're playing blind, the villager request system results in a very immersive experience in the village where you will do something for someone and they'll thank you for it, and then you'll come back a few quests later and that person will have, for example, will have upgraded their shop, or will have, built something, or will have had some other NPC show up, or will want to buy you a meal or something. But in general, I think the villager request system is amazing. The bulletin board, likewise, is a fantastic system. The bulletin board is this board in the center of the village that villagers and other people can put little notes up on. And it kind of, not railroads you, but often pushes you in the right direction. It'll give you little hints about what you should be doing. It'll tell you about what's going on in the village. I think it's a great storytelling tool, and just kind of a fantastic addition in general. The bounty board, likewise, is another great system, and this is a gameplay mechanic, but something I love about it is that, for people who don't know, the bounty board is basically a board that lists a bounty for each monster in the game, and it's an extra reward you get when you clear a quest for slaying a particular monster. And something really interesting about the bounty board system is that they actually calculate and simulate the lives of the other hunters in the village besides yourself, and will use that information when calculating the bounty board prices. So, for example, there's a rival hunter and a young hunter and some other hunters, and the game will actually simulate which monsters those NPC hunters are hunting, and use that when it calculates the bounty board prices, which I find really interesting. The bounty board system is great. In a game where resource management is super important, it encourages you to pay attention to it, because sometimes the bounties can be high enough for it to really matter. And I love that about it. So just generally a great gameplay mechanic. I'll talk about a little bit more how it works in the online mode later, but the fact that they went through the effort of simulating the NPC hunters, I think, is amazing. Speaking of the NPC hunters, I'll just kind of talk about the NPC villagers in general. I think they're great. They have very clear personalities that I find interesting, from the Wyverian One-sama to the Jumbo Chief to the Fishman. Ship Carpenter, he's great. I love the Master Shipwright. The way you can arm wrestle him in particular, because this is also the game that introduced arm wrestling in both the town and the village. And it's just they all have great personalities. They're a lot more archetypical or archetypal than the original NPCs, or the NPCs from the original game, but I don't think they went too hard into that. I don't think they're tropes, really. They're more tropey, but they're just kind of riding the line between being kind of overdone and being charming, I think. But I like them a lot. I especially love the Jumbo Village Chief. And yeah, I should also say I'm going to talk about spoilers in here. I don't think I said that. So if you want to play the game blind like I did, don't listen to. Okay, well, let me be more specific. I'll go over a little bit more when I'm going to do spoiler sections, and I will, I plan to include timestamps in this video. So, maybe they won't be there right when I post it, but at some point I'll update the description with chapters. So you can skip ahead when I talk about spoiler-heavy sections, but just in general, as I go on, I'm going to talk more about spoilers. But the story in particular made me love the Jumbo Village Chief. I think he's amazing. So yeah, speaking of spoilers, we're going to kind of go into the spoilers for the village now. And then after that, we're going to move into talking about the online mode. But yeah, so this is your chance to skip ahead. If you want to skip all spoilers, then go to the online mode section. But if you want to play this game truly blind, knowing almost nothing, besides, I guess, what I've already mentioned, I would just play it, Don't listen to me talk about it, just go play it. It's a great game. But, yeah, so, village spoilers. The upgrading the village, I think, is great. It's kind of one of those things that after the first game, I never would have thought they would add, because it just requires so much effort on the. Well, I was a big dummy and forgot to check to make sure I actually had space on my hard drive before I recorded all that. So I was saying a bunch of shit that got cut off, but thankfully I noticed before it was too late. But what I was saying before I got cut off is that the ability to kind of upgrade the village over time is something special to me, and I think they executed it fantastically. It makes you more attached to Jumbo Village than any other Monster Hunter village, because it's the only one that you get to see truly grow, from the beginning to the end. And it makes you feel like you're a villager. You're not just a hunter. You are a hunter, and you're one of the most important people in the village, but you're not just a hunter, I think Moga Village is pretty good at that sometimes, but it's different when you actually get to be there as the village grows and comes to exist at all. Kokoto Village has a unique atmosphere in the first game because you're essentially in a mentorship under the Kokoto Village Chief, under the hero Kokoto, as you kind of find your footing, and become a hunter, a monster hunter. And there's definitely a little bit of that here too, as your teacher, your sensei, is basically the your sensei is basically the instructor in Jumbo Village, but it's definitely less of the focus of the narrative, and being just part of Jumbo Village is something they did really special, specifically because of the way you upgrade it. And it all feels, like I said in the villager requests section, it all feels supernatural as you basically just do whatever you want, help out who you want when they ask you, and it just happens naturally, The villagers ask you for things, and they tell you when the things they need are like actual needs that you can't skip versus things they want based on the color of the villager requests. The blue ones are not required and the red ones are required. So you basically can just do whatever you want as you hunt, and things just kind of happen around you. Because there's no key quests in this entire game, there's basically nothing. Well, when you're in the offline mode, you do unlock specific things for fighting specific monsters, but the actual quests themselves are not key quests. So when you're playing offline, you do have to try to hunt every monster if you want to unlock all the content. Online, that's not the case, but we'll talk about that more later. But offline, you can, you basically can just do whatever you want. The same is true online. And kind of piggybacking off of that, going into the story, the narrative, and the dialogue, it's all pretty good in this game. The dialogue is pretty goofy sometimes. It's very reminiscent of Monster Hunter 4 and 4U. So it's not quite as... it doesn't take itself quite as seriously as the original Monster Hunter did, but it's not so goofy that, for me at least, it never feels too much. Sometimes it's a bit much, but I like it a lot. The just general narrative, though, I think is fantastic. Specifically, the ending, though. Unlocking the Ancient Tower is by far my favorite experience in any Monster Hunter offline mode. Just the way they did it is perfect. That's one of the things I had spoiled, is how to get one of the Ancient Tower books, which I really wish I didn't have spoiled, but it's, what can you do? But yeah, they do a fantastic job of just kind of introducing these books to you early, so you have time to kind of figure out what's going on, or acquire some of them before you realize you need them. And then the villagers will start telling you about these ancient tomes that have, been found or scattered, and give you hints as to how you can get them. And you have to find them all, and when you combine them together, they tell you the location of the ancient tower. But you still need Psycho Serum to find it, which I think is interesting. I just think it's a fantastic experience in general. I have a video on my channel, actually, where I, you can see me explore the Ancient Tower for the first time. I'd never been there in any Monster Hunter game, excluding the Forlorn Arena in Sunbreak. And I think they did it really, really well in the offline mode. It's I think the ending of just kind of ascending the Ancient Tower blind is probably something that I don't think any other Monster Hunter game will top. It's kind of crazy, just the amount of effort you need to put in to find even where it is, and then after that, just climbing up this huge tower. The only Monster Hunter map that I've ever known to hide a part of the map from you while you're in the camp. But I'll talk about it a little bit more when I get into the locales in general. But from a narrative perspective, the way they introduce the tower and the way it in the offline mode and the way it basically is just this divine place. It doesn't I think it's hard to kind of understand what's supposedly so divine or unexplored or untouched by man about the tower until you see it, how they did it in this game. And it's kind of a shame, I think, sometimes, the way how the tower is basically just an arena now, but it's whatever. I just really love the way they did it in this game, and it has basically cemented the tower is my favorite locale in any Monster Hunter game. And finally, and this is a pretty major spoiler, another thing I wish personally that I never had spoiled, but you know, it's whatever. And that is that once you finish the game and you've fully upgraded your port, you can go to Kokoto Village from the first game. And I love the way they did it because they actually changed things about it. It's not just the same place again. It's they really cement it as and cement this game as a sequel to the first game. You know, so the villagers will in Kokoto mention the hunter from the first game and talk about specific events and fill in some gaps. So you find out that when the player character from the last game became the new hero of Kokoto and took out the sword and the stone, at a certain point, the new hero of Kokoto just decided to leave, and they put the sword back in the stone when they left. And so it's still there waiting for you, and you can become the new hero of Kokoto again, the third one. The forest and hills are locked behind Kokoto Village offline, which I think is fantastic. The forest and hills are really given this air of like respect in this game that they've never had, in my opinion, in any other game, where it's almost like a sister map to the tower in a way, in terms of the just kind of sacredness of it. It's supposed to be this kind of like founding land of monster hunting, and I think you can kind of feel it in the way that you can fight monsters there that you can't fight anywhere else, specifically Rathalos. And they never really did that in any other monster. This is the only Monster Hunter game where Rathalos is like a rare monster. He's practically an Elder Dragon. Like, not literally, but in terms of the amount of kind of respect he's given by the game. He's treated like Yan Garuga or Rajang or a lot of those other monsters that people will debate whether or not they're like elder level monsters or whatever. And I think it's kind of cute, and I think it's really funny when you consider how he's considered overdone nowadays. But yeah, in Dose, he and Kokoto Village and the Forest and Hills are basically all treated as this sacred origin of hunting, both in universe and out of universe, obviously, as they come from the first game. And so Kokoto Village, for example, has a brand new theme, has new background music that the main melody is Proof of a Hero, and it's great. I just absolutely adore what they did with Kokoto. Some of the villagers, I think, too, it's really adorable what they did with them. The Kokoto rival in particular. The house that the second hero of Kokoto lived in was turned into his house into the rival's house after the second hero left. And so when the third hero comes, you have to share it with the rival. And the rival has this painting of himself on the wall, and every night he comes in his house and he just stares at his painting, nodding in approval. And it's hilarious because he's always been kind of how do you put it, a self-centered jackass. And so I think that, staring at his own painting is pretty in character for him. But that's basically it for the offline mode. There's, probably a lot more that I'm forgetting, but I don't want this talk to be too long, and I'm just kind of going over my thoughts off the cuff in a stream of consciousness way. So I'll just kind of leave it there for the offline mode, and we'll talk about the online mode. God, I love that. I love that opening so much. All right. So now we'll talk about the online mode, which is the quote unquote the actually important part of the game. It's definitely the focus of the game, and the part that developers would want you to play the most. You would have had to pay in Japan a subscription fee to access it. But you know, obviously we don't have to pay that in 2023, and presumably in 2024 and years after that. That's just, you know, a guess. So, the online mode takes you to Dundorma Town instead of Jumbo Village, and I think Dundorma is probably the best hub world in any Monster Hunter game, like ever. Specifically how it is in DOS. But we'll talk about it a bit more. So you start in the town gate when you first join the online mode and you log in. You select your land, which there would have been many of. They would have been, in Japan, they were called various things like Brave and Cynthia. They're just basically different servers. And then once you join a land, you could join different areas within that land. And there would be different types of areas. So there'd be free areas, which is where you could just do whatever you wanted. There were recruitment areas that you could go if you were looking to recruit hunters to do specific tasks. You know, stuff like that. There were areas for only high rank hunters, some for only low rank, etc. But either way, when you join an area, you would start in that area's gate. In the town gate, you can talk to anyone that's in the entire area. But there's no, you can't see other players though. You can just talk to them in the chat. But there's a lot of NPCs down there you can talk to, a lot of townspeople. And there's an NPC named the Elder Dragon Scholar. And the Elder Dragon Scholar can tell you basically everything you need to know about the town. I think he kind of has too much info for the start, and excuse me, but I don't, you know, like it's all good information. It's just a lot, and you don't have to read any of it either. It's just basically whatever you want. And he'll tell you all about the different mechanics online and all about the town, where to go, what things are, stuff like that. Also in the town gate is a bounty board, because the bounty mechanic also makes a return from the offline mode. But something interesting about the bounties is that they actually take into account the activities of the online players. So, for example, if the player base hunts a lot of Rathian will have a really low bounty to try to prevent overhunting. But if very few people have hunted Rathalos, then Rathalos would have a very high bounty to prevent underhunting. And you can check the bounty. The bounties update every 24 hours. And you can check them to see if it's gone up or down from the last time. And yeah, it's a fantastic mechanic. Something that I really enjoy. And like I said before, money is just so tight in general in the PS2 games, or money is so useful, maybe I should say, that because things are expensive, that it's often worth it to actually keep up with the bounties. A lot of people want bounties to return in a newer Monster Hunter game, but I think the truth of the matter is that they wouldn't matter very much, because we already get a lot of Zenny. Some break, sometimes it's easy to run out because things are expensive, but it's so easy to just sell like one of your 12 billion like carapaces or something and get like all the money you need. In DOS, sometimes you actually have to sell some rare shit you don't want to sell, or just go hunting, you know, and so the bounties can sometimes be a lifesaver. And the bounties also play into the quest reward system where the bounties are split up between all of your hunters. So it kind of adds this push and pull element to the gameplay where going with less people will mean a harder quest because the monster's difficulty doesn't scale. So you have to, you know, put in more work with less people, but you get a greater reward. And I think that's kind of something that makes it even more unique, you know? So like a 10,000 Zenny bounty, which some can be, with 4 people, you would only get 2,500 Zenny. So that's a real motivation, you know, to do it solo, you know, or try it solo. Next up in the town gate is the group board that you'll find at the very end of the town gate. There's a guard that will not let you into the town unless you check the group board and join a group. And groups are 10 players in the free areas, which are the only ones that are on the private server right now. But in the recruitment areas on the official servers, they would have been 4 players. So you would have had an option to join some 4-player groups or join 10-player groups. And I like the 10-player groups. I think 12-player groups would have been better overall, but I prefer having the 10 over the 8-player groups that were in the original game, because just having space for more than just 2 hunting parties at a time. Not every hunting party needs to be 4 players, and I think they went with the 10-player groups to try to encourage more of those 3-player groups or hunting parties and give people some space to just do things like chat, you know, with other players while they're in town, and not feel like they're taking up space. But overall, I still think the 12-player groups probably would have been a better choice, just because it's easily divisible. But the group system is cool. I like it, and you can still access the area chat even when you're in a group, which is something unique that I like a lot. So you basically always have access to a secondary chat for everyone in the area, which can be up to 150 people. So when you enter the town, you first enter the central square, which is also the market. And this is a huge step up from Mineguard, because in Mineguard Town, the market is its own separate area, and you can't see any other players there, which kind of sucks. Because the market in Mineguard feels kind of lonely, and people don't go there as much as they buy shit from the market in Dundorma because it's in the central square. Yeah, so the central square has a combiner, which is so much more useful than the combiner from the first game because he combines shit from your box too. And there's a tool shop and a grocery shop because one thing I didn't talk about is that the meal system in this game requires you to actually have the items as meals, or the meal ingredients as items. So there's a shop that sells them, and just like the first game, they have rotating sale days or deliveries, which I love. I'll talk about that a bit more when I talk about item acquisition, and I get to the gameplay. But the central square is great. You can fish there. I forgot to mention. I don't remember if I mentioned that you can fish in Jungle Village. I think I did before all my footage was yanked, but yanked from me. But you can fish in Dundorma too. Next up is the workshop, which is where you can forge equipment. I like the workshop a lot aesthetically, but it has a much longer animation when you make equipment than the original game did, and it can make forging a lot of things a drag. I didn't mind not being able to skip the animation in the first game because it's so quick. Like, it feels like they designed it knowing you couldn't skip it, and so it's just a quick guy runs back, you hear a bunch of hammer sounds and like workshop sounds, and then he comes back out with your equipment. But in this game, you have to sit there and watch all the assistants hammer away at it. Like, but it's cute. I like it. I like the animation. I just wish it was skippable. Or if it can't be skippable for some reason, it should be shorter. Next up is the assembly, which is, in my opinion, one of the most unique areas in the entire Monster Hunter series. An entire area dedicated just to, almost entirely, just to socializing with other players and listening to the diva sing. It's called the Arena in Japanese, but it's the assembly in English. And part of why it's called the Arena in Japanese is probably because the Hunter's Dojo is also there. And the Grand Tournament, but I'll talk about those in a bit. The diva is... I love her so much. Sitting and listening to her sing with other players is so much fun. And in an online game like DOS, where you're supposed to make friends as you play, it's really something special. She can sing one song for free, but all of the other songs require you to bring her sheet music, which makes a lot of sense, and also means that there's kind of a lot more socialization to it, because players will ask each other, does anyone have this song? I want to listen to this song. Or, oh, hey, I found this unique song. Do you guys want to listen to it? Like, it's not, if you just had access to all of their songs all the time, you would just have to sit down solo yourself once and listen to it and be like, okay, cool. Those are cool songs. I got the gist of it. But because you have to discover them, and discovering them is hard, unless, obviously you could just look it up, but that's kind of boring, and the game wasn't really designed with that kind of playstyle in mind. But it means that you and your comrades are more likely to talk about it and actually go sit and listen to them, and it feels more like an event. If you're sitting and playing with your friends and you find an item, you find sheet music that no one has heard or found before, listened to, you're all going to want to sit and listen to it and see what the song is. I'll talk about it a bit more when I get to progression items, but she actually has some relevance to the progression as well, which I like. So she's not just there for socializing, but I think it's very smart to have areas dedicated to player socialization and things of that nature. There's also the Hunter's Dojo and the Grand Tournament there. The Hunter's Dojo is also, there's a dojo in the offline mode, but the online one is a bit more fleshed out. It's basically like the training quests from Monster Hunter G and the Freedom series games. Very similar to arena quests from later games, except for the Hunter's Dojo also has quests that are on normal locales. They're not all not all arena quests. I haven't done too many of these. I really wish you got hunter rank points for completing dojo quests. I don't know why you don't. I think it's kind of dumb. And it's pretty much the only reason I haven't done them as much as I have the other modes. I've done them more than a lot of people, I'm sure. And it's not like I ignored them. It's just that I, have probably spent, I think I have like 400 hours or something in this game. I probably spent only like 10 of those at the online Hunter Dojo, if I had to guess, at max. But the Grand Tournament is a completely different mode that a lot of you guys have heard of. It's a PvP mode, and I like it a lot. It requires some self-balancing because it's like a side mode, right? So it's not the most balanced thing ever, where generally speaking, skill is important and strategy is important, but a lot of the times who wins will just amount to who has grinded for the better monster. And there's not really any matchmaking. You can only do it at night, so it feels a bit more like an event. It's not really like it feels like a side mode, and I think that's fine. And that's how it's kind of supposed to be. It's not like there's not going to be competitive ranked Grand Tournament, but the Grand Tournament is a lot. It's a lot of fun, and it adds some new dimensions because items are also useful against your opponent. So like you could use a flash bomb to stun them, for example. And I love that mechanic. But yeah, the hold on a second here. I lost my spot. Here we go. Yeah, I remember one thing I was going to say also is that the items you use in the Grand Tournament are returned to you afterwards, which is fantastic because I would not use any items or play the Grand Tournament if I lost my items, because the items are so like important in this game in general and sometimes take decent amounts of effort to obtain. So I don't like using them when I don't have to. And so the fact that you're not actually wasting your items when you use them in the Grand Tournament means that I feel so much more freedom to kind of build strategies. And because it's just kind of a side mode that's for fun, I think it was a good choice. The Tavern is... oh, wait, no, I skipped over the housing system. So the housing in Dundorma is basically ripped straight from Jumbo Village. It's called the My House system in Japanese, but you know, that kind of butchered English of always calling it a My House as like if my is part of the noun. I think it's pretty funny, but it's I like the housing system in Jumbo Village, but I really wish they hadn't just kind of reused it in Dundorma. The house looks identical. If you upgrade it in Jumbo, it's also upgraded in Dundorma, which makes sense from a gameplay perspective, but I get that it's kind of supposed to be more abstract housing, and you're supposed to feel more like you own the house, which I do. Because in Mindguard, for example, there's guest housing. It's basically an inn. You don't own it. You have to pay Zenny every single time you enter it after a quest because it's not your house. In Dose, it's actually your house, which I do like. But going from having 5 different versions of a unique guest house to just having like the same house everywhere is kind of boring. However, new in Dose is that you could invite other people into your house, which is fantastic because, as I mentioned, meal ingredients are something that you actually have to use. They're items. And because of that, people have incentives to invite other people into their houses and feed people, because if you're going to do a quest with someone, you want them to have a good buff. And if someone doesn't have the ingredients they need to get a good buff that season, then feeding them is, generally speaking, worth your time. So I think that is it's a great addition. I think if the housing also had some kind of furnishing like Tri does, which it doesn't, there's no way to customize it, but if it did, it would be nearly perfect besides the fact that it's the same in Jumbo and Dundorma. But in terms of usefulness for the house and the house feeling like it is your house, this is definitely the best game for that. But overall, it's severely hampered by the way the system is identical in Jumbo and Dundorma, and the way that you're just kind of supposed to accept that somehow you have the same house in both Dundorma and Jumbo, even though they're pretty far apart from each other. So next up is the Tavern, which is where you can depart on your normal, your low-rank quests. The Tavern, I really like the Tavern. I don't like it as much as the Mindguard Tavern. This is pretty much the only part of Dundorma Town that I think was actually better in Mindguard. The Tavern in Dundorma has some problems, but it also has some great parts. Some of the great parts are that it has a shooting gallery minigame, which I think is crazy and awesome, because you can get items from there, and some of the items you can get are actually really useful. But the rewards, the item rewards you can get changes by the season. So you have to actually pay attention to what season it is and what items you can get in what seasons if you want to utilize that properly. So it doesn't just, it's not basically like, oh, free items. Like and you actually have to get a good point score too to get some good items. It's a lot of fun. The tavern in general, it has a great soundtrack. I love the tavern songs in this game, but it just is a little less social than the Mindguard one. Something about the low camera angle of the Mindguard tavern and the way the tables are like the first thing you see and are like take up so much screen space really encourages players in Mindguard to sit at the tavern and like drink with each other and talk a lot. And you see that a lot less in Dundorma. The tables in the Dundorma Tavern are not the focus a lot of the time. You know, the way the camera angle is positioned kind of pulls your focus towards the quest counter, which makes sense, but also just means that people will sit less. And the Hell Hunters, the Hell Brothers, return from the first game, which is cute, but they sit at the table that is closest to where you post quests, which is, in my opinion, not a good idea, because when you have two NPCs sitting at a table designed for 4 people, that means now that the table players are most likely to sit at they'll now only have 2 spaces to sit, and so I really think they should have been moved, and that table should have been open for 4 people to sit at. But it's not horrible. There's, like I said, there's good things about the tavern and worse things. Overall, though, I think I ended up preferring the Mindguard Tavern, not because the Dundorma Tavern is bad, but it's definitely worse, I think, than the Mindguard one. But one thing that I think is not worse is the Elder Hall, which you unlock at Hunter rank 31. At Hunter rank 31, the Guildmaster in the tavern tells you that you can now ascend the Grand Staircase at the center of Dundorma, and the guard there will stop, preventing you from doing so, and suddenly you're in this grand, like, hall. I don't even know what else to call it. It's like, it feels like you're in the presence of royalty, and the Elder Hall is what's on the screen right now. The Grand Elder is probably my favorite NPC in this game. The Grand Elder is what he's called in the English patch for DOS. His Japanese name is the Great Elder. Obviously, in MH4U, they called him His Immenseness in English, which is a little bit goofy. I'm not the biggest fan of the name. I know it's a hot take, but I've asked to prefer the Great Elder to His Immenseness. But the Great Elder is he's awesome. But the way he'll like slam his sword against the floor every once in a while just to remind you of his presence as he goes like Harum. It's I think he's great. The seating here is so much better because it's actually next to the quest board. So high rank players, I notice, are so much more likely to sit down and drink with other players than low rank ones in the tavern because of this. And it's one big table for 10 people to all sit at, instead of just the little 4-player tables, which I think is great. So you can kind of all sit and drink together at this at this banquet. The high rank quests can be pretty hard sometimes, but I like it a lot. I love the Elder Hall. It's by far my favorite area. Well, maybe not. I don't know if I like the Elder Hall more or the Assembly more, but they're both amazing parts of Dundorma. And talking about the Grand Elder, we'll go into the townspeople in general. The townspeople are pretty good. The Grand Elder carries by far. The Guildmaster in DOS is so much less interesting than the Guildmaster was in the first game because he's just so much less relevant to the plot. Like, I don't think he's even in Monster Hunter 4G at all when they brought back Dundorma. Like, that's how kind of like forgettable he is. He's basically the same as the Guildmaster in the first game, but with less plot relevance, which I find to be pretty boring, but it's whatever. I think they kind of knew he wasn't as important, and we're banking on the Grand Elder being more, being able to make up for that, which I think he did. The Minister, I think, is great. The little guy who kind of is the Grand Elder's like right-hand man. I think he's cute. Yeah, there's really not that many notable NPCs in Dundorma, to be honest. The Diva, I already talked about. I think she's great. They kind of really went for quality over quantity. There's very few great NPCs, and then a lot of NPCs that you just kind of forget about. A lot of them are just like Mindguard had a wandering minstrel and like two guys that have this rivalry that two guys that have this rivalry that is what's the word, that kind of grows as you play and progress. Mindguard has all these NPCs that are related somehow to the NPCs in Kokoto Village, and like all these different things that Dundorma just doesn't have. Like Dundorma, the only really notable NPCs are the Grand Elder, the Diva, the Minister, and the Hell Hunters. And the Elder Dragon Scholar. That's pretty much it. The Hell Hunters, the Hell Brothers, are basically ripped from the first game and much less interesting in this game. In the first game, they have like a very involved story that they just don't have here. Here, they don't even shit talk you, and I'm like, what the hell? Like, they just ignore you and talk to each other when you talk to them. You just are basically overhearing their conversation. Whereas in the first game, they go on this arc of calling you like a whining baby the entire time, and until eventually they basically are cowering at your feet as they realize that you're actually a better hunter than them. And it's great, and it made them my favorite NPCs in that game. But in this game, they're just kind of boring. And I think that's really a shame. But the dialogue in general is just much less of a focus in Dundorma than it was in Mindguard. The NPC dialogue only changes 3 times. In low rank, their dialogue stays the same. It does change by the season, but it usually doesn't change to anything that important. Like it's always just like little tips about like, oh, did you know that at night during the jungle it rains, so you can't use bombs? Stuff that is pretty easy to figure out on your own, or that they would have already taught you in the village. And then it doesn't change until you reach high rank, whereas in the first game it changes after every urgent quest. The equivalent to urgent quests in DOS are guild exams, or the hunting exams, and the hunting exams do not update the dialogue at all. And so the story in general just kind of by story I'm referring to the dialogue really specifically, as in the story as it is expressed through text it falls flat. It's not very engaging. You could play this entire game online. This is the online mode, at least, without talking to that many NPCs, and there's a few things you would miss out on. The story, like the dialogue, isn't useless, but it's not nearly as important as it was in the first game, and that's probably partially on purpose. but for me personally, I found it disappointing. But the one place, or the one thing that, in my opinion, kind of makes up for, or one of the few things that makes up for the lackluster story as told through text, is the siege mechanic. We'll start with the town siege, which is specifically what I think really carries the story of Dose. Every once in a while, the town can just be attacked by an Elder Dragon. And shit goes down. Like, it's kind of crazy. You know, NPCs run around panicking, the town's on fire, and you go to the battlegrounds, which is literally a section of Dundorma as a hunting locale, and you have to repel an Elder Dragon, usually. Sometimes it's not an Elder Dragon, sometimes it can be Shengao Ren or something like that, but it's really special. There's a special cutscene that plays when an FMV, when you join the town during a town siege, and then one that plays at the end where you can see the villagers kind of rebuilding the town, and it's great. They don't work properly on the private server right now, which sucks, but I think they're fantastic, and it's very immersive just to kind of see the town change naturally and see the threat that the Elder Dragons can cause right in front of your eyes. The legendary artisan also shows up when a town siege happens, and he can forge some equipment that the normal workshop smith can't forge, which I think is really cool. But the mechanic is kind of nullified by the fact that you can bring the legendary artisan to the village as well by doing requests for the workshop in the village. So whenever there's not a town siege online, it basically just means you can just go to the village and bring him. Granted, you have to do requests, so it's still gamified. Like, it's not like he's just there all the time in the village, but it does mean that him not being in the town does matter a little bit less than it would if he only appeared during town sieges. There's also fortress sieges, which is where a monster is attacking the fortress outside of Dundorma. So the town, like, these are a lot more boring in my opinion. The villagers do not care as much. The dialogue doesn't change at all. I think only the Grand Elder and Guildmaster have different dialogue during Fortress Siege. In my opinion, they should have gone for this more tense atmosphere, like not the same as the town siege. Because during a town siege, Dundorma itself is being literally attacked as you speak. The Fortress Siege is it's a fortress that's right outside of Dundorma. So if the monster gets through the fortress, then Dundorma is in trouble. But for now, it's fine. And so I think they should have kind of gone for this liminal atmosphere of like tenseness, where people are anxious but are not panicked, you know. And they didn't do that at all. So like there will be a Lao Shan Lung at the fortress right outside Dundorma, and people will just not comment on it very much at all. I will say though, the Fortress Siege does make Lao Shan Lung feel a lot more special. In the first game, it's kind of really easy to not like Lao Shan Lung doesn't feel as much like an event. He does the first time you ever fight him because you know it's just new and it's unlike anything else in that game. But in Dose, or I mean, but in, you know, later in that game, he's not special because you can just hunt him whenever. So the fact that in Dose you have to actually wait for him to appear is great. The problem is that he can also appear in the village. I hate the village version of Lao Shan Lung. I think it sucks. It's boring to fight because it's so easy, so it doesn't require any thought. and it takes away all of the multiplayer elements that I think Lao was built specifically for. So I you know, I think they shouldn't have put him in the village, and it would have made the fortress sieges a lot more, even more special. But it's whatever. The fortress siege is the only way to fight Ashen Lao. So it's not, it's not like it's completely negated, and you also obviously can't fight high rank Lao Shenlong in the village. You can in a fortress siege, but the fortress sieges are cool, and I'm glad they exist. But I wish they had done more with them. All right, so now we are on to our final section about gameplay, and I'll just kind of have some ambient tracks to listen to in the background and some combat BGM for later. But the gameplay, and I kind of put this off on its own section because I knew I would talk way too much about Jumbo and Dundorma in general and the atmosphere and kind of narratives of those things. I talk about the mechanics too, obviously, but yeah. So now we'll kind of focus more on the hunting in a way. So number one is the seasons. The season cycle in this game is, and this is kind of a hot take, but I think it's one of the best mechanics in Monster Hunter. And this kind of will feed back into my point I'll talk about later about item acquisition. But the season cycle in this game puts you at the whim of the world itself. And also means that there's a new axis of management added with time management. In the online mode, seasons last for 25 hours, so just over a full day. Meaning that when you play online, it's going to be whatever season it is for the entirety. That means that at the start of every play session, you can sit and think, what can I hunt now? What will I not be able to hunt in the future? What are the things I can do right now that I will not be able to do later? I love that it adds that extra strategic aspect to it of deciding what you're going to do. The offline mode seasons are, in my opinion, a bit too lenient. I think it should have been more expensive to skip seasons offline, and they should have been longer. Not crazy longer, but longer. But once you get into high rank, it doesn't really matter because you can't get high rank items offline. So you need to plan. There's time management. The day-night cycle as well, I think, is great. I love the way that it actually has effects. It kind of relates to the weather a lot. There's a weather system in this game, but the weather is fixed by time of day. So, for example, at night, it will always be raining in the jungle. I do think it would have been better with a separate dynamic weather system, but, it was 2006, and this game is already pretty rushed. So it probably would have been too much to ask for. I think what they did is totally serviceable. It would have been better if the weather system was unique, but it's whatever. Sometimes it makes sense, but really most of the time, not really, actually, now that I think about it. Because, for example, the volcano is always erupting at night, and it's not during the day. And obviously that's not how volcanoes work. But maybe they could have done it where at the start of every season it would pick a weather condition for each locale, and then that would be the weather for that season. So, for example, this season the volcano will be erupting. Next season it won't be, or something like that. But I think it's fine the way they did it. I think there could have been better ways and could have been worse ways too. But the most important thing is that it actually matters. When it's raining, for example, you can't use bombs. And there's other changes, such as certain zones being inaccessible due to flooding. The volcano in particular has the most drastic changes. The volcano is basically built on the contrast between the day and night versions, as the night version, when it's erupting, has these lava flows that very frequently impede your ability to kind of go specific places. And especially in high rank, when you don't have access to the map in at the start of the quest because you get no supplies at the very beginning, you can get lost pretty easily if you forget that you can't go a specific way at night and you try to go there and you're like, oops, there's a river of lava here. So you have to actually plan out different routes and think about what the best way to get to the monster is. And that's my favorite part about the level design in this game. The level design in DOS is fantastic. Like, I think it's the best in any Monster Hunter game because the amount of this is the Monster Hunter game where I put the most amount of thought into just thinking, what is the fastest way for me to get from point A to point B? And it's different every time, you know, in specific times of day and with specific party compositions, it can be different. In the Snowy Mountains at night, for example, there are these boulders of ice that appear and block specific caverns. You can destroy them, but it requires some effort. However, explosives are really good at destroying them. So, for example, if I have a Gunlance main on my party, I'm going to have different routing plans than I would without one, because the Gunlancer could destroy the boulders easily with a Wyvern Fire. But if it's all Blade Masters, or I mean, if it's all non-Gunlance users on my team, and none of us brought bombs, we're gonna have to plan a route around those boulders, or sit there like hacking away at them, not getting very far. And I love that. It's the level design has an element of strategy that no other Monster Hunter game has. The first game can get close sometimes, but because the maps aren't dynamic, it matters so much less in that game. In DOS, there's way more importance to just kind of the environment in terms of routing that I absolutely adore. And just kind of going into the locales in general, the environment design, they're a lot more fantasy than the first games. For example, in the jungle, there's this big rainbow in the camp that's there all the time. But it's good. I like it, and it fits the tone of the game in general. I sometimes I miss the more realistic environmental design of the first game, but I think the more fantasy environment design in DOS really fits with the more fantasy tone in general of the game. Obviously, the first game is fantasy. Like, I'm not saying the first game wasn't fantastical, but DOS is definitely more fantastical with the increased focus on kind of the more fantastical monsters that can turn invisible and do crazy things. The introduction of Elder Dragons in general, which Elder Dragons as a category hail from this game. And you can see a lot of that kind of bleed into the environment design. They also do a really good job of making you get lost, especially if you don't have a map. Maps are really important in DOS until you really know the locales. And like I said, they change, so you have to know them both at day and at night. But you can kind of tell that they purposefully place certain areas in specific ways so that if you don't have a map, in order to go, for example, to an area that is to the west on your map, you actually have to exit through the north exit. So if you don't know the locale very well, and all you see is a paintball mark to your west, and you think, oh, I gotta go west. So you just start traveling west in the area, and you go through the west exit, and suddenly you're at a completely different area that did not go where you wanted to go. And so they did a really good job of designing it so that if you don't know where you're going and you don't have a map, you're very likely to go the wrong way sometimes. Obviously, going with other players means that sometimes you can rely on their guidance, but it's not always a guarantee. Sometimes you're with people who are also new, or sometimes you just think they're going the wrong way, and you're like, oh no, I'm not gonna go that way. I'm gonna go this way because this way is where the monster is, and they're probably just going to get an item or something. But I like it. It's not something that happens all the time, and now that I know the maps, I don't really get lost at all. I've played the game enough that I know where they are, but it's that kind of reliance on game knowledge in general that I think DOS and the first game as well, just PlayStation, PS2 Monster Hunter in general, really thrives on making its players understand the game and its world in a way that no other Monster Hunter games do. And I really think that's the biggest thing that I think is one of the most immersive things about it. The only thing that your hunter knows is the knowledge that you have. All right, let me switch to the other ambiance. Here we go. But I love it. I love the environment design. Obviously, the ambiance I'm showing in the areas, I'm showing it from the forests and hills, which are from the first game. But I think that the environment design in the first game is unmatched. I don't think DOS does it better. I think it fits better for DOS to do what they did, but there's just something special about the first gen environment design that, and keep in mind I'm talking about environment design, not level design. That I think is just it's not matched in DOS. DOS has the better level design, but the environment design definitely feels less special, and it feels less real and less immersive. I still think the forest and hills are the most immersive environments out of all of the maps that are in DOS. The level design is more immersive in the other locales because of the addition of one-way areas, or one-way zone transitions, I mean, and just the kind of way that you have to think a lot more about where you're going. But the environment design is definitely not more immersive than the first game. But the next point I want to talk about is probably my favorite part of the gameplay. It's the item acquisition. And this is something that's in the first game as well, and in G, but to a lesser extent. It's definitely the least extent of the three games without farms, but because you don't have a farm in this game, you have to know where to get items. And acquiring items can be involved, we'll say. Because of the extra access of time management, because the items you can find changes based on the season, acquiring items is probably one of the most driving factors of your gameplay in this game. In Monster Hunter in MH1JP, the reason why item acquisition and item management is the most prevalent gameplay mechanic is because you only have your 100 slots for your item box. You only have one page. In DOS, you have up to 5 pages. Way more than you need, to be honest. And so the item management is not centered in the item box space. Instead, it's baked into the time management and into your low pouch size. So you only have 20 spaces in your items, 20 slots in your item pouch. So when you go out, you often have to make decisions about what you take home and what you leave behind, because you just can't take everything with you. And all your quest rewards have to fit into your item pouch, just like the first game. And So if you go to a map with a lot of items, you have to leave some items behind. And some items can be hard to make, you know? So if you're leaving an item behind, you're also leaving behind everything used to combine for it. Everything that, like it kind of makes it so much more important. For example, flash bugs are surprisingly rare. But because there's also new combinations in the three-way combination system, instead of flash bugs, I could go and mine for sunshine ore to get flash bombs, or sunshine stone, I mean. But sunshine stone requires it to be day to get. So if it's nighttime and I need flash bombs and I did not prepare and I don't have my flash bombs, it's pretty hard to get sometimes. Because I can't mine sunshine stone. But the market deliveries return from the first game too, which is great. So you can think, okay, I could go out and gather honey now during this warm season, because it's warm season, so I can get honey. Or I could wait until tomorrow when I can buy honey. And buying honey is obviously a lot faster than gathering for it, because you can buy more than 10 at a time. Well, not at a time, but because you do have to run back to your item box. And yeah, but there's just like a lot more strategy to figuring out what items do I need, why do I need them, is it worth the need, how long, what's the fastest way to get them, like should I play the shooting game, should I try to buy them, should I wait for a delivery, should I wait for the half off sale because they're too expensive, should I go out and gather them, if I do go out and gather them, what season is the best time to gather them. And this also kind of goes into more than just items, like fish. You can get fish in quest rewards and subquests too. Subquests is a completely new dimension to it. So, for example, monster eggs, you can get from doing monster egg subquests, which you can only do during breeding season, or you can do the shooting minigame. I don't remember which season the shooting minigame has monster eggs. So there's kind of like that, do I go do monster eggs now or like subquests? And then you can also get silver eggs and golden eggs to sell, or do I just do the shooting minigame? And the subquests in general add so much more dimensions to all this that I love. For example, mailing subquests can give you some of the songs for the diva, because the cats steal the songs from travelers and stuff, the sheet music. So the items in general are great, and part of that is progression items, which is a mechanic completely unique to this game. Progression items are items that you need to go on certain quests. So the first example of that would be the Ancient Tower books that I mentioned in the offline mode section, but in the online mode, you start to see those a lot in high rank. So, for example, there's the Song of Origins, which is a song that you can get for the diva that unlocks the Forests and Hills. But in order to get the Song of Origin, well, first of all, the game doesn't tell you. It gives you hints. There's some hints that talk about a song passed down by the Shakalakas. They don't tell you at all much about what it'll unlock. There's some hints about it being a forest, but what you need to do is find King Shakalaka and carve him, and then it's like, I don't know what the percent chance is, but there's a chance that you'll carve the Song of Origins. Getting King Shakalaka to appear requires killing 4 regular Shakalakas during a quest. The player has to figure this out themselves. Me and Amanda, who's one of the players on the MH Old School private server for this game, me and her, we were trying to figure out how to make King Shakalaka appear, because we got a hint from another player that it would require King Shakalaka. And so the Shakalakas hide in this game. They hide in gathering spots, and they hide in places, and they don't always come out. And we couldn't figure out what to do to make them come out, and we didn't even know if that would fulfill the requirement for King Shakalaka appearing. But then once you get the song, you give it to the diva, and it reveals to you the location of the Forest Hills. And the Forest Hills are high rank only in this game. And that's just one progression item. There's a lot more too. There's the Unexplored Region set and the Book of the Ancestral Dragon, which you acquire all in completely different ways. And the Ancient Tower books, like I mentioned too. The progression items are awesome and probably tied with Seasons for my favorite mechanic in this game. The items in general are just... I love the item management in this game so much. Combination has been super enhanced with the 3-way item combination as well. I won't talk about it too much because it's just basically what it sounds like. It's just there's more combinations now because now you can combine 3 items together. There's quality of life issues that I could talk about, but ultimately I think they're not really that big of a deal for the most part. For example, not being able to combine from your box is pretty much completely negated by the fact that the combiner can combine items from your box. So, like, you can combine from your box, you just have to pay a fee. But now we'll talk a little bit more about just kind of the content and the combat. Let me see here. Let me turn this music down just a little bit. Cool. So, Monster Hunter G content is something I want to talk about, which is that this game took all of the content from Monster Hunter G and repurposed it. This kind of thing I didn't think I would like, but I think they did it really well, actually. In a way, low-rank Dose in the town kind of feels like high rank did to me when I played the original game. And high rank kind of feels like G rank. All of the new G rank items they added in Dose are now high rank exclusive in Monster Hunter G. The new G class items like Carbolite Ore and like Rathalos Ruby, for example, that wasn't in the first game. It's a G rank drop from Rathalos in Monster Hunter G. They made it a high rank drop in Dose. So like Carbolite you can get in high rank, and Rathalos Rubies and stuff like that. I actually really like it. It makes the low rank feel more important in a way because you can get plates. And plates are still rare in high rank. They're not. They're definitely not common. And you need a lot of them for some things. So it doesn't really. It doesn't make the. It doesn't make plates less valuable. The Monster Hunter Portable connection, I think, is kind of dumb. I wouldn't think it was dumb if it wasn't for the fact that you need it to get the rainbow symbol color. I didn't talk too much about the symbol colors, and I probably won't because I'm already talking about a lot of shit, but the symbol color mechanic, it's the predecessor to armor skills. To armor pigment. I like the system. There's some problems with it. There's some good parts about it. But in order to get the rainbow symbol color, you have to get every other symbol color, which would be fine if not for the fact that doing the Monster Hunter Portable connection unlocks the pinks, the Sakura symbol color. And the Sakura is one of the ones that's required for the rainbow color, meaning that in order to get the rainbow color, you have to own a copy of Monster Hunter Portable and a PSP, which I think is dumb. Pretty much everything else about the Monster Hunter Portable connection I think is fine. It gives you some equipment recipes that are easier than the normal ones. I think that's dumb too. If you removed that and and you made it so Sakura color was not required for the rainbow color, I would I would like the portable connection a lot more, because Yain Garuga, believe it or not, is actually not exclusive to the connection, to the MHP connection. You can also fight him online in event quests, so it's not, you know, like you could still fight him even if you don't do the connection, which I think is good. But now I'll kind of move on and talk about. Did I talk about the new weapons? I think I did already. I'm not sure if I did, actually. That might have been in my footage that got cut off, so I'll talk about those now. The new weapon classes in this game are all like subtypes of their main weapon, and I'll just cut this out if I did already talk about the weapons. But I kind of like that about them, but also at the same time, they're obviously were rushed. The balancing clearly was not done with the idea that people would ever use them on their own. For example, gun lances are infamous for their horrible balancing in DOS, in terms of just like the general roster of ones you can make. And I'm pretty sure this is in huge parts because they didn't see the gun lance as its own weapon type. They saw it as a subtype of the lance, which is why they share an upgrade tree. And the gun lance is literally an iteration on a weapon that was a lance in the first game, the gun lance prototype. So they, you know, like switching weapons is a lot more important in DOS. And I do like that. There's your weapon is basically a toolkit in a way, and you need specific tools for specific jobs sometimes. Like I mentioned before about how when you have a gun lance user, that might change how you route yourself through the snowy mountains, because now you can destroy the ice boulders, or the glaciers, or whatever you want to call them. And things like that are the things I like the most about the DOS weapon classes. Hunting Horn is awesome. I think they nerfed the hunting flutes though because of the hunting horn, which I don't like as much, but that's just a theory. I don't actually, or a hypothesis. I don't actually know if they did. It feels like they did, but whatever. In general though, they're all really fun. I think they expanded the combat in really interesting ways. I like that you now need certain elements to do specific things. The ailments matter a lot more, the way that poison can affect elder dragons, or that you know, they added the sleep wake up multiplier in this game, so sleep actually has a benefit beyond just giving you some time to like sharpen and stuff and capturing, because they also split you know, added trank as its, or tranquilizing as its own status effect. In the first game, all you need to do to capture a monster is put it to sleep in a trap while it's weak, and it you know, it doesn't have to be with trank bombs. But in this game, they kind of gave sleep actually a modifier, which I like. So you can do big hits to wake them up. And just feels like your decisions matter more in terms of your equipment loadout before you depart on a quest. But next, I want to talk about the monster you see on the screen, which is Shen Gao Ren. And this will be kind of the last section. I'm going to talk about some of the big boss monsters in this game. 3 of them in particular. Shen Gao Ren is a foil to Lao Shanlong in a way that I really enjoy. And I think they did it fantastically. The way he walks in backwards as you hear this distorted demonic version of Lao's usually sacred and heavenly theme is, or opening, I should say, is fantastic. I love what they did with it. The general mechanics are great. I like how he can damage the fortress before he even gets there. But the guild exam system, which I didn't talk that much about either, and the guild exam system has some problems. that anyone who's played the game knows. For example, you can't carve monsters during a guild exam, which is dumb. It makes no sense, and like it's just stupid. Like it's one of those decisions that I've thought so much about, and I can't think of a good reason for it. The only reason I can think of is that they wanted it to feel like you're not doing the quest for yourself, that you're doing it for the guild. And so you're not supposed to have personal gain for the quest, but I just think that's dumb. Like that seems like a stupid decision that I just do not understand, but whatever. So when you first fight Shengao Ren, it's during a guild exam, well, an urgent request to be specific, which is part of the guild exams, and so you can't carve. You seem like I don't even think I would mind it that much if you could carve during the urgent request, but you couldn't during the guild exams. But whatever. He's also a bit too easy there. Not too easy, but I think that he could have had just a little bit more health. The main thing, though, is that and the reason I think that is because like when I went and fought it, we severely nerfed ourselves and were able to kill it, which I think is like I don't think I've ever seen someone repel Shengao Ren. Like I mean, I'm assuming you can. Like maybe you can't actually, in which case it's the health numbers are fine actually, but I assume you can repel him, and the fact that I've never even seen that happen is like, I think that means he could have used just a little bit more health. But overall, it's great. I like that he's the fight that gets you into high rank. Lao Shanlong is the only fortress monster that you can fight before Shengao Ren, so they really make sure that you would have kind of the prep you need for the narrative significance of Shen to matter, because you've either played the first game or you fought Lao Shanlong in Dose. They really play on the expectations. Like I did not expect him to like attack while I was standing on the fortress wall overlooking him. Like that literally threw me off guard. Yeah, and the way he attacks, where players would put down bombs during Lao Shanlong, like he actually blew me up. Because I was not paying enough attention and did not notice that he was like charging up an attack. And when I did, I didn't think he was gonna attack the ground. I thought he was gonna like, I don't know, just fire it vaguely like in an arc ahead of him. And so when he like directly attacked the ground where I put the bombs and blew them up, I was like, holy shit. Yeah, so you can see my Lao Shanlong fight, my Shengao Ren fight on the channel. I have it posted. If you want to see what that was like for me when I did it for the first time. I like Shengao Ren a lot. I don't like him more than Lao Shanlong personally, just because I think I love Lao Shanlong's design so much. But I think overall it's a better design encounter. He's even better when you fight him in the battlegrounds in the town. The fortress in general, I think, holds him back a little bit, because it's just dumb that you can't kill any of the fortress monsters before the final area. Like, it's another one of those decisions that I just do not like at all. In my opinion, the low rank monsters you fight in the tavern, or in the fortress, should just have the same amount of health as their high rank versions, but be really easy to repel. So players will usually repel them the first time they fight them, meaning that they'll always go to the final area anyways. And then in high rank, they should be much harder to repel, but have the same amount of health. So that way, when you're weaker, they feel so much more like impenetrable walls in a way. And in my opinion, you know what? If a player doesn't make it to the final area because they're good enough, like, that's totally fine. They don't need to get this epic moment every single time. And it stops being epic after a while. So I think that it's perfect. Or I think that it would have been perfect if they had done it in a way where you could actually kill any of the fortress monsters before they get to the final area. But next up is Yamasukami, and this one I also recorded my first encounter with it, and I'm actually recording it, or not recording, editing it still, so I'll post that sometime soon. But Yamasukami is another one they did great. I did this one duo with Alphadivine, MH United, and it took us multiple attempts because this guy hurts hard. He's the urgent request at HR 41, and he's just unlike anything that you've seen in Monster Hunter before that point. You know, like considering the monsters that came before, like they kind of hint at him in low rank. If you go to specific quests, he can appear and fly over you in the jungle base camp, which I love. And so he appears at the tower in Dose, and at HR 41, and it's just kind of like I love it. A lot of people don't like this encounter, but I love it because you're basically following him as he floats up to the top of the tower. And it utilizes the spiral staircase and just the tower in general as a locale so much better than anything else. And the worst part about it is that once again, you cannot kill him until he reaches the tower summit, which is kind of dumb, especially because you're a little bit reliant on RNG for when he reaches the summit. And that's just dumb. Like, I don't know why they wouldn't let you kill him before you get to the summit. But it's great. He can also appear in the battlegrounds, just like Shenga Ren, and attack the town. There, it's great. His BGM is fantastic. It haunted me when I first heard it because it was unlike anything I'd heard in Monster Hunter before, and it was not what I was expecting. Yamasukami is the first monster I had ever fought that really felt like more than an animal. Fatalis feels that way in the first game, Lao Shenlong to an extent, but Yamasukami, more than those two, was something mysterious. And I love that. It's one shot, like suck attack is great. I like the Thunderbugs because they add a lot of dynamic things that you have to keep track of. A lot of people get overwhelmed by them and just don't like them because of that, and I think that's fair, but I like them. I think that they probably could have been a little bit easier to kill, but the concept in general, in terms of how much they actually matter, I like a lot. Yama can kill you really easily if you don't know what you're doing, and that's the other thing I like about it, is that it feels actually difficult. At least it did to me. Obviously, everyone will have different experiences, but I adore that encounter, and I love Yamasukami as just kind of this really unique siege boss that Monster Hunter just didn't have before then, you know? There's some weird stuff, like, for example, the tentacle breaks have literally no difference about them. Like, the only way to know that you've broken his tentacles is to clear the subquest. I don't know why they did that. It's a bit weird. There's also some he has some really weird hurt boxes, like where but overall the design of the fight is something that I love. It's like everything in Dose, where it needed a lot more polish, but you can tell that the actual design is great. And to me, that's the most important thing. But next up, I want to talk about what is my new favorite monster in general, and the final boss of this game. That is Old Fatalis, or the Ancestral Dragon Fatalis, whatever you want to call him. But When I first fought this guy, and I also recorded my fight with him, and that's also going to be posted eventually. I don't know when, no promises. I haven't even started editing that one, unlike the Yamasakami one. But you will see it eventually. I went into him completely blind. Knew nothing about him other than what he looked like, and that he supposedly utilized Thunder Element. And so when I heard, like I went to the tower, and because remember, I had to collect 3 different books to fight this guy and put them together. And I don't want to spoil too much about the books, so like I won't tell you where you get them or anything like that. But the books, the book of the Ancestral Dragon is something like it's insane. And the finally getting it and being able to go to the tower and then hearing like this music start playing as he soars in was like, and flies down, and like it was like, I was like, what even is this thing? It's like, I don't know. It's just, I get chills like even thinking about it now. But old Fatalis, I'm gonna call him Ancestral Fatalis. The Ancestral Dragon is like, it's my favorite final boss in Monster Hunter so far. It's an event-only monster, so you can only fight it by waiting for him to appear and also having the book of the Ancestral Dragon. But the way he utilizes thunder that looks just like Dragon Element is like chilling. There's so many potential lore implications there that like I think a lot of people haven't picked up on. Like Dragon looks like thunder, and his thunder looks like Dragon Element. Especially because in Monster Hunter and Monster Hunter G, and DOS, Dragon Element is not like, it's not a breath attack, right? The only way you can actually see Dragon is on the VFX of when you attack a monster with a Dragon Element weapon. And there, it looks just like the Thunder Element, except for red and with like black clouds. And that's exactly what his thunder looks like. The way he railroads you into standing right in front of him. Everywhere else is unsafe and can be pelted with lightning or one of his many attacks. The safest place to be is right in front of him, looking at him eye to eye. And that is more intimidating than any of the other Fatalises I fought, for me. Because it's just, he's the only monster I fought, like I'm like speechless, like just like thinking about it. He's the only monster I fought that feels like a human. The way he just kind of swat at you with his hands if you stand too close to him. And the way he, like his beard, the way it flows, the way when he gets enraged, and I noticed that they kind of toned this down in PSP games, probably because they're not on CRT displays. But when he becomes enraged, his face gets so red that it looks like war paint. Like it looks like he has war paint, and it's like kind of scary almost. Not literally scary, but it's like really unnerving how human it makes him look. And maybe human isn't the right word, but like sentient. It just I don't even know what to say about it beyond how much I love it. And I think that old Fatalis, like, it blew away Lao Shenlong as my favorite monster. I feel bad saying that still sometimes because Lao Shenlong is, generally speaking, a monster people don't like. So, you know, there's a little bit of hipster in me that wants to like it more because it's unliked. But it would be disingenuous of me to not say that old Fatalis took over as my favorite monster. And like the music is just so divine. Like I've kind of like I wish I could go back to that moment when I heard it for the first time and feel that way again, because I was not expecting it to be so different from the regular Fatalis' theme. I also think that he's really different than Black and Crimson Fatalis. It's kind of unique, like in terms of just how different he is. And fighting him at the summit of the tower is like perfect. The way his like lightning, like the way he flies up and perches at the very top and then rains lightning down upon the entire arena is like it's great. And when I first fought him, I tried it solo, just to kind of scout around, and my heart like was pounding like in a way that I don't get when I play Monster Hunter. Like I was like I was like it's so weird, and I felt like I could do it solo. Like I couldn't. I realized that later as I knew more about the encounter, but it filled me with this determination. And this guy actually corrupted my footage too. I managed to get it back, thankfully, but he like overloaded my CPU while I was recording my attempts against him. And some of you guys watched them live in Discord, so you saw them. Like I said, I have them recorded and I will post them, but it took me multiple attempts to kill this guy. It's definitely the hardest monster in DOS. One of the harder monsters in Monster Hunter in general. Probably not the hardest. I don't know what the hardest would be, but it's great. It kind of, in a way, made me like the first-gen Fatalis a little bit less, because the first-gen Fatalis' difficulty in a lot of ways comes from the fact, comes from its crazy high health, but you also have 15 minutes with 3 carts. So because the original Fatalis has multiple rounds, that means that you have, in essence, because you have 5 rounds to slay it, you basically have 15 carts. Whereas with the Fatalises in DOS, because they can't be repelled anymore, you have 3 carts for 50 minutes. And that actually kind of makes them a lot harder, even though you can do them solo if you're good enough, whereas you can't, like, you basically can't do first gen, well, specifically Monster Hunter, the JP version of Monster Hunter 1. You basically can't do Fatalis solo, even if you're good enough, without incredibly good RNG and weapons from Fatalis himself, unless you use the reload bug. But here, it's a lot more dependent on your skill. It requires like being able to solo it. I don't think it takes away from the fight as much. I do think all the Fatalises maybe could have had more health to make them just a little bit harder to solo, but I don't even know, because it's hard enough to solo them as is that I think they might be fine as they are. But old Fatalis in this game is just like it gives me chills, man. Like the way he, like, just everything about him, I think, is nearly perfect. The biggest issue, and in my opinion, like, this is pretty much the only problem I have with the old Fatalis fight, is that his lightning, sometimes the indicator for it will go underneath the floor, depending on where he's standing. And that means that sometimes you can get sniped by lightning you didn't even know was there, and that's just kind of dumb. I wouldn't mind it if it felt more intentional. Like, then it would just be like it would just be super immersive, because you would not know when you were gonna die, and you'd just be looking for the spots to stand that his lightning does not reach. But it's clearly not intentional. It's just clipping through the floor. so it just feels kind of cheap. But that's really the only issue I have. He can stall a bit too much, but I don't really mind the stalling the way that some players do. But overall, I think he's the best the best encounter I've ever had in a monster game. And the build up for him is great, actually. I didn't think anything was going to be able to top the build up for the original Fatalis from the first game. I don't know if I would say that old Fatalis' build up is better than the ones from than the one from the original game, but it's pretty damn close because basically everything is set up for old Fatalis in the same way that basically everything is set up for black Fatalis in the first game. The existence of Elder Dragons in general, they hint at the existence of old Fatalis the moment you talk to the Elder Dragon Scholar, and he tells you that some people think Elder Dragons are the ancestors of all living creatures. They hinted at him in the First Hunter's Encyclopedia by mentioning Black Fatalis is the oldest living ancestor of creatures called dragons. They hint at him with the existence of the tower in general. The Diva and the Wyverians seem to be related to him in some way, specifically because of the way his he's just ancient in general, and he comes to the ancient civilization of the Wyverians. Like, he is the ancestor of Elder Dragons, and the Wyverians are the dragon race. They're dragon people. Like, it just naturally seems to follow from there that they're linked in some way. And I think that I don't know, it'll be hard for anything to top this for a long time. Just the atmosphere, I don't know, like, it just, everything about Old Fatalis to me feels nearly perfect. There's been some doubt recently on the private server about if we have the correct stats for him. So I'm a bit hesitant to talk about his health. I think the one thing that I would probably change is give him more health, assuming that the version on the private server right now does have the correct stats to what the original server would have had. But besides that, I think he's nearly perfect. And I think it's the perfect ending to a game like this, you know? Like I mentioned the way that Dose is more fantastical, and I think that old Fatalis, as a more fantastical Fatalis, like, it fits perfectly. And just fighting him at the top of the tower, which is just the tower summit, being this ever-liminal space between the clouds, where the sun shines, but it also doesn't. Like, you can see in the screenshot, sometimes it looks almost like it shines from below, which makes no sense. And, like, there's just layers of clouds everywhere as you go up, and you never get to see the sky. The tower is the one place that is completely unaffected by the March of Time. Like, a huge motif and theme in this game is the way that time changes things, you know, and the way that nature is not static, but the tower is. It's unaffected by the flow of time in a way that is, like, creepy almost. During day and night, it looks the same. There is no day and night version of the tower. And even at the tower summit, you cannot see the sun or the moon. And it's just perfect for this fight. They really, I don't know. They did it perfectly. And I love this game so much. It's become my favorite game of all time, you know? Like, being able to experience this game with my friends and make friends through this game and have experiences that I've never had in a game before, let alone a Monster Hunter game. Like, I think it's really something special. It's not for everyone, because the special elements are elements that people oftentimes will just not enjoy. But overall, it's by far the most unique Monster Hunter game, and for me, it's definitely my favorite. I hope that some of you guys, will give it a try. Well, first of all, I hope that the majority of you stopped watching this video a while ago to go play it unspoiled. But because I think playing it blind is, in my opinion, the best experience by far. It's definitely the most authentic experience and the most immersive. But in general, I think that this game is just, it's amazing. It has problems, but none of them are enough for me to not call it my favorite game of all time. And I'm just very happy to see it supported by fans, and to be able to play it online, because this would not be my favorite monster. This would not be my favorite game of all time if I had not played it online. I can tell you that right now. But overall, I adore it. Speaking of playing online, one thing I forgot to mention actually is the hunter rank restrictions on quests. It's probably the worst part about the online mode. You're very restricted about which quests you can join. First gen is very free in its progression. You can do almost every low rank quest from age 1, as long as you have someone who can post the quest for you. And so I really don't like that they kind of restricted what you can do at the beginning of this game, but once you kind of rank up and reach HR 20 in particular, it's not really a problem. Because at HR 20 you can do every low rank quest, and then once you reach high rank, you can do every high rank quest except for Elden Dragons. So it's really only an issue up until HR 20, but the game has some problems that really only matter when you're playing it in a small player pool, like is available now, because it was clearly designed with the idea that thousands of people would be playing it, and that you'd have access to areas that are exclusive to low-rank players and ones that are high-rank and stuff. But just seeing it supported by people in 2023 it's great. Like, the smaller community definitely creates a worse experience sometimes, but it definitely creates a more community-driven experience where you run into the people you play with a lot more often, and the fans of this game form, like, probably my favorite community in Monster Hunter. Like, it's something special, the way we all share items with each other, and because we all know how hard they are to get, and we're all basically just a bunch of lazy moochers who mooch off of each other as much as we can for both items and meal ingredients and for everything. And it's just, it's a lot of fun, and the conclusion of Old Fatalis really just pulled it all together, in a way that I don't think I would have liked this game, specifically its story and its narrative, nearly as much if it wasn't for Old Fatalis, because otherwise it would feel like it did not have a conclusion. And I would not have liked that. But realizing that Old Fatalis is really the conclusion of this game, it kind of pulls everything together and wraps it up neatly. But not so neat that there's not questions for you to ask and there's not reasons for you to keep playing. So thanks for, watching this, and I guess I just want to say thanks to everyone who kind of experienced this game with me, and was part of my journey. Especially to Alphadivine, MH United, who has been probably the biggest help in just my journey with this game, and is just one of the best people in the Monster Art community in general. But everyone I've played with, everyone who's replied to my Twitter posts, everyone who's encouraged me, just everyone in this community I think is great. And I don't think I would have enjoyed this experience as much if it wasn't for you guys. So thanks for listening to all this rambling and being interested enough in my opinions to care, or interested enough in this game. Either way, I just something special about Monster Hunter for me that no other game really hits, and I think Eidos is the epitome of that. So thank you for watching, and welcome to the world of Monster Hunter.